Let's take you here now. Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni is briefing the media following her visit to KwaZulu-Natal to assess the damage caused by the recent devastating floods in the province. Let's listen in.
In the last few days, there have been almost 15 ministers and deputy ministers here in KZN on the ground helping us to deal with the issues. I'm sure, Minister, you came face to face with the human cost of the crisis in terms of families who have lost loved ones and the additional trauma of those whose children are missing, fearing the worst, but who have not been recovered. And I know that you have taken strong initiatives as far as that is concerned as well. Of course, the damage has many faces, from lives to businesses to jobs to houses to businesses to roads and bridges, water and electricity, infrastructure. But another very important element of the infrastructure is telecommunications. And we are very, very glad, Minister, that you are here to look at that particular aspect specifically. You used your good office to bring the CEOs of the major telcos down so that they too put their maximum effort and shoulders to the wheel. And I'm sure in your address you will speak to the detail of that. We now know that there are probably more than 200 individual sites that are affected. We're trying to prioritize. We've agreed that we'll work as a joint technical team, giving support to each other. We've heard today that part of the difficulty is access, where roads have been washed away or mudslides have occurred. The issue of ESCOM and power and load shedding affecting the operational efficiencies, all of which we've agreed that we will submit to our joint working team that will then feed into the JOC and the inter-ministerial committee that we have at a provincial level. So, Minister, I would like to thank you for the great energy and leadership that you have shown and look forward to continuing to work with you. I must say that we're also using the opportunity, recognizing that in every disaster there is an opportunity to take things further. And so we're also looking at the broader connectivity issue, rollout of broadband, while we are working together and looking at the infrastructure. It's an opportunity to join forces in that effort as well. With those remarks, it's my pleasure to invite the Minister to address you.
Thank you, MEC Pile, and to all South Africans. We are in KZN. We were joined earlier this morning by the CEO of Vodacom and Mr. Shamil Jesopu, and the CEO of MTN South Africa, Mr. Charles Molapisi, also supported by the CEOs of BBI, which is Broadband Infraco, which is the state-owned company responsible for broadband infrastructure, the CEO and COO of Centec, which are responsible for satellite technologies. We were also joined by the acting MD of CETA, also by the chairperson of Centec, because they are going to come in quite strongly in giving continuity, and the representatives of Liquid Telecoms and Rain. And the importance of us coming through now is because we may not be first responders, but we, in the telecoms and ICT space, we are what we call the business continuity team. So when the first responders have done their part to stabilize, we then come in to say, how do we restore businesses to go? And as the MEC has indicated, we've got more than 400 sites actually that remain down, whereas the other sites have come up. And with the sites having remained down, it means communities remain disconnected. And without the connectivity, ability to make phone calls, they are not even able to access the first responders where they need the first responders, either both rescue teams, the medical response team, the police, and everybody. So it's important that we come in immediately with the stability that has been established by the first responders who have done magnificently well. to make sure that we then make sure that the communication links are re-established so that the help can reach the colleagues wherever they are, through those phone calls, through the messages that get sent for the first responders and the other assistants that come in. Even the teams that are doing the relief efforts, they'll need the connectivity to the communities, because the communities that are disconnected, they are also isolated and not able to be accessed, and therefore for them to get the attention of the relief agencies and relief efforts, they must be able to make the communication calls. So that's where we brought the CEOs and the representatives to come here and say what is the basic plan we can do and make sure that we reconnect the area. And we must indicate that the areas that are mostly affected is the KZN, the 5 regions, districts that are mentioned by the President, but also Eastern Cape, the northern part of Eastern Cape. We have indicated in the meeting that whatever effort is being made here, a similar effort is made for the Eastern Cape, and we're going to link up with the team. In the meantime, we've dispatched the CEO, the MD of CETA, acting to go to the Eastern Cape today to just re-establish the connections to make sure that they get back connected. Where we are, in terms of the telcos, as the MEC has indicated, we are regretting that during this period of plight, communities continue to vandalize the telecommunication infrastructure. There's been copper cables left, and I think, and the nation would agree with me, that in times of this crisis, we need to work together as South Africans and be patriotic. It's not time that we vandalize, it's time that we work to rebuild. We must be the first security of that infrastructure, because when communities are cut out, it means loss of life in some instances, because they will not be able to access the help. But what we've agreed this morning is that we are going to establish a joint technical team that is composed of MTN, Vodacom, Liquid, Rain, BBI, Centec, and CETA, in that which will also be at the provincial level, coordinated by the HOD of the Department of Economic Development and with the oversight of the MEC, and they'll continuously give me feedback. The team will meet daily to access the progress, because what we have tasked the team to do is to say which sites must be prioritized to make sure that the repairs, more especially road access that has to be built in, must be built in. When we went to another site outside of Doti, at the Tonga site, we even said to the telcos, maybe you need to rebuild the road if it means rebuilding it quicker, and give the other site for government to put a temporary road so that we could get those sites quicker, because with that disconnection, because it's what we call the interconnected sites where all the mobile telcos operate from, and it has been down because we can't get diesel up there because of the road infrastructure. So we're trying to say, how do they come in and how do government come in? But it's the prioritization that they're going to work both with the HOD and the MEC with the full support of the Department of Communications. Through our DG, we're also deploying a team that will remain in the province to work with the joint technical team to prioritize the areas. And the issues the joint technical team will deal with is how do we get the infrastructure back to the basic road infrastructure to make access, the security of the sites so that they can be secured from vandalism, and how do we deal with the load shedding and engagement with telecom, because as we continue to have load shedding in this province, it means that the relief efforts cannot then reach the people on time, and that's what we want them to sort out quickly. And we also have, and also there are issues of what temporary infrastructure they can use to get the connectivity back, things like lamp posts, which we, through the rapid deployment policy of government, the MEC will facilitate that the municipality of eThekwini and other municipalities can then give access, quick access for the telcos to be able to use that infrastructure to get back to work. We also did an assessment, because we are also working on the program of the digital migration, of the impact in terms of the houses that were washed away. We are engaging with the Department of Human Settlements to make sure that the beneficiaries who had not yet had their installations done, if their houses have been affected, as they get resettled, we'll then reconnect them there. And we are doing an assessment of those that have been installed previously, who might have been affected by being their house, the fiscal infrastructure houses being washed away, and we are going to then restore as soon as it's possible to restore. We are quantifying the numbers not only for KZN but also for Eastern Cape so that we can check the impact. But as the human settlements restores and resettles, we are going to be matching them and move with them in tandem, and the other discussions we are having with the colleagues on that. But we are also here, and earlier I joined the prayer service and met with the Premier, had a brief chat with the Premier. We're looking at how we use ICT to intervene and assist where the gaps cannot come through. We're engaging with the Minister of Basic Education and the MEC. The Minister is engaging with the relevant MEC to say how do we use ICT to make sure that the number of learners who have now been displaced out of schools because the school structures have been either destroyed or completely isolated, what is the intervention that we make? We'll make the necessary announcement next week with the Minister of Basic Education. We're working with our agency, .ZETNA, on a particular solution, and CETA, and I think NENISA in that program. So we are working for the restoration of that, of saying how we use ICT to intervene. As the MEC has indicated, we've got a project called SA Connect, which we had announced earlier in the year that we intend to connect 33,000 communities to Wi-Fi connectivity in those communities. We are looking at, as we rebuild, and as announced by the President, the third phase, as we rebuild better, we must really rebuild better. How do we make sure that connectivity goes to those settlements at a go? And we'll continue to work with the province. We have started working with the province on that project, but now we're going to reprioritize and make sure we respond and as the new settlements come in, and also the other settlements coming in on SA Connect. As we were here, we also visited our SAPOM offices, the post offices, because the post offices remain critical in the dispensing of social grants, both for the indigents and the SRD grant. And when the post offices have been affected, we earlier went to the Tongad post office, which has been closed temporarily because it was badly affected by the mudslide. And we are working to say how do we restore quicker to make sure that in this event of a calamity of this nature, those who are already indigent, who are depending on the social welfare of government, do not remain excluded. So we need to make sure we've given a directive to the post office to say we need to make sure by the time that the social grants are repaid, where the post offices have been temporarily closed, they should have been reopened. Where the post offices are completely destroyed, we are still doing a stock take of how many are destroyed. There are alternative arrangements to pay the social grants to make sure that the people are not disadvantaged because of the damage to the infrastructure. That communication will also communicate next week as soon as we finalize the detail. But also on the post office, we have lost one colleague, Mr. Benedict Magwaza, who passed away because of the floods, and his two daughters, aged 9 and 6, are still missing. We are going to plead for assistance to help find them. And his wife and eldest son has been injured, and their home has been completely destroyed. We are working with the family, and we have, the post office has already visited the family. I've also sent a delegation to visit the family in terms of the assistance that we have to offer the family, both so that they can continue with their lives, no matter how painful it is, but also to find closure by finding either the remains of the missing children, and we are praying that maybe the missing children are in another place, they'll find their way home at some point. But as the mission moves to recovery, we are ready for the worst, and we'll work with the family to assist where it's possible. We are also aware that most of our post office workers have been affected, more especially in the relevant district. Some of them, their houses have been destroyed completely. Some of them, they've lost their immovable properties, clothes, and so forth. We are working with the post office. By end of this week, we'll have a list of everybody who has been affected, and we'll work with them to say how do we restore them so that they can then give back to the community like they've been given in the best way that is possible. It's at this time of like this that we continue to plead to South Africans to open not only their hearts but also to open their wallets and donate. And we appreciate the efforts that the telcos have been doing to raise contributions and for the relief, and also the interventions for their customers that they have planned on doing. We are working with the Telcos Association, it's called ACT, and next week we should announce together the joint details of the relief effort that they've been putting through. We are continuing to plead with South Africans to say, open your hearts, but also open your wallets and donate, even if it's food, even if it's water, whatever contribution you can make to make sure that the people of KZN can have their life restored to some level of normality. So in the week that comes, the following weeks in particular, starting from next week, we'll finalize the details of how the responses in terms of what have we restored for connectivity and what particular areas we are going to restore at what time and the timelines thereof. And we'll also announce the other interventions in terms of ICT. In terms of government connectivity, government institutions, which is the responsibility of SITA, which it does through BBI. In KZN, there has not been disruption in terms outside of schools and some clinics in terms of that connectivity and police stations, which we are going to work to restore. But in the Eastern Cape, the whole of Eastern Cape government, the north of the Eastern Cape, they've been disconnected for the past few days. We are working to bring in satellite technology that is offered by Centrec to immediately get them back into online so that there can be business continuity. And the efforts will be detailed later in the week, but we are hoping to restore within this week still connectivity in the Eastern Cape. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Honorable SABC. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the point now where we take questions. We open the meeting for questions. We will take the first round of questions. I would request colleagues as they ask first to indicate their names and thereafter the media house that they are representing, and then put the question. We will take the first round of questions.
My name is Bosi Marcos in SABC Radio News. Minister, in case the dates of paying social grants comes and then some of these post offices are not yet released, so there is not clear whether that will be able to accommodate the people who are receiving social grants. What other alternatives that the post office would have so that the social grants are being paid for those days?
Thank you, another question?
Thank you. It's Khumbudzo Ntshavheni from the SABC TV News. Minister, my question is, we'd like to know how many post offices have been affected in KwaZulu-Natal, and if maybe you can basically categorize for us that this one is badly affected partially, so that we can understand which ones maybe we can expect them to get back to work, especially as we are saying that they are the paid ones for most of the country. And then the other question is in relation to cell phone network companies. They agreed with the minister in relation to ESCOM, saying that ESCOM is basically doing their business when it comes to load shedding, because in some cases on weekends ESCOM staff members are not working in terms of connecting them because they say they got a bigger trade when it comes to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. The third question we have in the absence of a question for now, I will request you to give you the new question for that.
Look, I'll say we're making a special appeal to the Minister.
The MEC will start.
Minister is passing the hot one to me. So thank you very much. Look, the issue of engagement with ESCOM has been happening even before this question arose with regard to the telcos. We have a commitment from ESCOM. The leadership of ESCOM was present at a meeting with the Minister of Public Enterprises last week, where the commitment was made that they would look at requests from KZN on a case-by-case basis. I think you have noted a statement by ESCOM last week where they say that KZN is not exempted but they will not implement where they can be sensitive to the conditions that we face. Part of the reason that they have not had to face a tough decision is that Ntshavheni's infrastructure has been knocked out quite a bit, even in respect of electricity. So even without load shedding, the demand is not as high as it would normally be. But we did get the commitment from Eskom, and de facto there is no load shedding in Ntshavheni. I think the issue is in the other regions. I took up with the regional manager, Mr. Nambo, just yesterday or the day before, the issue of Ugu. It was a very similar situation there with regard to the St. Helens Rock pump station, which is the major raw water pump station for almost 80% of rain for me. And they've made the commitment that they will seek to exempt that. We've also made a request with regard to the Boy purification works. So the same principle will apply here. I think without raising expectations, Minister, it will be difficult to have the whole of KZN exempted, because other provinces will then have to carry the load and then have more load shedding than they would normally have. I think this is where the technical working group becomes critical, to identify precise sites and geographic areas, and then on that basis we engage Eskom for limitation of load shedding for that geographically prescribed area. I'm sure it's doable. They've granted, they've agreed in principle. It's the detail of the implementation that we have to work on. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. The first question was, what should happen should the post offices be fixed by that time? We are lucky to say we only have, there are two post offices, which is the Roseback in town, and then also the Tongat one, that have been severely damaged by water. They're the ones that have been shut down completely, but they are going to be, we're going to do cleanup efforts to bring them back on steam. If I'll have it my way, I'll say by this Friday they should come back. And then we also have 9 post offices that have been affected by either shortage of water or where the electricity supply has been affected, but they are operational. The issue is the electricity and the water challenge. Those are in Ukomas, is Pingo Beach, Mega City, Lamontville, Jacobs, Bluff, Queensberg, St. Wendolins, and Scottbeck. And the Duguza post office is going to open tomorrow because it was also affected. So that's why we are confident that we should be able to continue paying the grants in those post offices as normal, unless there's another one which detail we have not received. But the information we have is that those ones we should be able to restore them in time for the payment of social grants. And so we are confident on that restoration, and the load shedding, the MEC has dealt with it. And in terms of the affected areas in the Eastern Cape, I'm sure the same arrangement will be made to make sure that the Eastern Cape is also, those that are badly affected, like in the areas of Port St. John's, they can have a similar exemption so that we can have a business continuity so that people can be accessed and they could be able to make calls. Thank you. We're good?
Okay. Is there a follow-up question?
No, it's a deal.
Do we have follow-up questions, or do we have a new set of questions?
No,
do we have new hands? We don't have new hands. I think you see it's having a field day for democracy, and then we will follow them.
Minister, there was also earlier on in the presentation that Sentech mentioned that the infrastructure was also affected. According to your assessment, what have been maybe reportedly given, how much that infrastructure has been affected, and what is the extent of that damage in terms of the transmission of radio services and also TV services? Minister, my question is about digital migration. The floods of KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape affect
Thank you. These are those the only two questions we have. I like the second question, it's sweet and short. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start with the last question, and I'll do the intro, and the CEO of Centec will speak on behalf of Centec in terms of the impact on the broadcasting services. The flood of KZN and Eastern Cape will not affect the cut-off date. We have done the assessments. The numbers though of those who had installed were not that were affected were not too big. The ones that were not yet installed, that's why we are doing the assessment. But even if we do whatever, as long as they are not resettled, we can't do any connection. So we need to then, as they are resettled, we'll make sure that the connection goes into those houses. So we're going to give a full integrated package. That's what I was referring to say we're working with the department and the Minister of Human Settlements to make sure that when they resettle, before a person gets a key, if the person had applied or the qualifying beneficiary will then install the set-top box in that house so that they move in quickly with a full package. So it will not affect then our cut-off, because if it affects the cut-off date, we're going to exacerbate the problems of communication. So we need that spectrum to make sure that we can communicate and South Africa can be connected quicker, and it will help us resolve the problems that are there. Centec initially, in the briefing today, they indicated that areas where the transmissions have been affected, some because of the vandalism of infrastructure, but I'm going to hand over to Mr. Mlamleboy, the CEO of Centec, to speak on behalf of Centec on the details and the plans to restore. But in terms of the technical committee that is prioritizing which sites must be restored and recovered, the Centec is part of those, and the prioritization will go into that, which the MEC and the HOD will then be responsible of escalating to the Prof. Jock to make sure that those that are key are restored as quick as possible. Mr. Boy.
Thank you very much, Minister. Yes, the infrastructure of Centec, which carries broadcasting, radio, television. Fortunately, in the province, we've had limited damages to our infrastructure as a result of the floods. But the damage that we have experienced is in the area of Port Shepstone, where one of our sites has been vandalized. And it is a very unfortunate situation in there. But we are restoring the site. The roads are damaged, and it limits our ability and capability to go up to the site and restore services on the site. But we can assure the listeners and viewers that within the next day or so, as soon as the weather clears, we will have that road fixed, and then we'll be able to go and restore the services on that site. Because of the theft of copper, and power has been disrupted on the site. But we're working on it hard with our regional office here in the KZN region. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Boy. Ladies and gentlemen, by the local things, we have exhausted questions that could have been there. And may I take this opportunity to sincerely thank the Minister for this opportunity. Thank you so much, SABC, for granting us the platform to reassure the people of the country, the people of the Eastern Cape, the people of KwaZulu-Natal, of our commitment to bring relief to them. With that, we will then come to the end of our media briefing. Thank you.
Thank you. That will restore the whole north. I hope I got a copy. Thank you. I'll keep in touch with you.
Well, that's a briefing by Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, briefing the media there just following her visit in KwaZulu-Natal to assess the damage caused by the recent floods in the province. She was joined by several executives from the telecommunications and ICT companies, saying that there was significant damage to infrastructure, causing major connectivity challenges. Basically saying that connectivity is currently being restored in most areas, especially those that were badly affected. Of course, a minister saying that cable theft has made it very difficult to reconnect fully. The department also looking at assisting schools. Those were badly damaged schools in the province. I think at the last tally, over 500 schools were either completely destroyed or badly affected by the floods, in recent days. And of course, Tuesday marked the beginning of the school term in that province. So many children were not able to get that necessary education. She also mentioned that in KZN, 2 post offices were severely damaged. 9 others were affected by water and electricity challenges, but these are still operational, and some post offices in the Eastern Cape also damaged, but she has indicated and assured that business continuity in those sites in KZN and in the Eastern Cape will definitely continue.